Welcome to Local Everywhere. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Stephen Tyler Dave Davis,
Right.
and he's with Fantasy Theater, children's theater, and they do really unique and wonderful things for kids. So, Stephen, take over.
Sure. Yeah. So Fantasy Playhouse Children's Theater and Academy down here in Huntsville, Alabama. We've got some really fantastic things going on. I'm actually the first artistic director that we've had. We started in 1961, and we were one of the first arts organizations to get started in the 60s when Huntsville was kind of up and coming during the space race. We have the Redstone Arsenal, the Space and Rocket Center. A lot of engineers that work on NASA projects are here. So, and during that era, lots of arts organizations were starting, and fantasy started back in the 60s. So, about 80s or 90s, when I was a kid, I started going through Fantasy Playhouse, being in productions, taking classes, and now 30 years later, I'm running the place.
Wow.
It's great. We have all kinds of exciting programs. We have a full main stage season where we do fairy tales. We do a Christmas Carol every year. We've been doing a production of a Christmas Carol for about 35 years. And this season, we were doing all original plays written by Alabama playwrights. And two of the plays I wrote myself.
Nice.
We're trying to foster creative space and keep the energy going to make new work all the time and keep the kids flowing and their brains cranking all the time.
What's the title of your plays?
Well, the one coming up in a couple of weeks is Rapunzel and the Beanstalk. So it's
Oh,
just a mashed up of Rapunzel and Jack together.
right.
So, and we tied in a bunch of science and math and into the curriculum as well. It's all also about diversity and inclusion and being yourself and loving being a good friend. We really try to hit all of those values, and since we're
Uh-huh.
creating our own plays and since we are writing them ourselves, we can really weave in all of those really important values and kind of do these retellings of these old stories for today's audience. It's really special.
Now, what you guys do, is there a comparable uh organization in in any other part of the country that does what you do?
Absolutely. There are some incredible children's theaters all over America, and I've always got my eye on them. Nashville Children's Theater is amazing. Seattle Children's Theater. I'm always kind of watching what shows they're choosing, what audiences they're focusing on, because I want fantasy to be the best children's theater in America. And so how do you do that? Well, you look at other people that are the best and are doing great work.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always
Mm-hmm.
got my eye on those folks, and I strive to be to be in that on that level with them, and I think we could do it in our little town of Alabama. We've got some big things going.
Are you originally from Alabama?
I am born and raised here in Huntsville, but I was in New York for 15 years, so I consider myself to have my New Yorker card because they say you got to be there for like 6 to 10 years. So I'm over the threshold.
So where in New York did you reside?
I lived all over in Manhattan, mostly in Astoria, Queens.
Okay.
And then I lived in Stuytown down in the East Village area. I had an apartment in Harlem for a couple of years and an apartment on the Upper West Side for a couple of years. So
Mhm.
I bounced around. I did the tour.
So you after that you moved back down to Alabama.
They called me. They said, hey, we're getting ready to hire a new artistic director for Fantasy Playhouse. You grew up through the organization. You know who we are. You know where we want to go. And so I was kind of the link to connect past and future. And so they brought me in. They wrote a grant here. The state of Alabama funded a grant for this new position. And I picked up my life in New York and moved back to Alabama. So now I'm back down here making art with this community. It's really wonderful.
So how many kids do you cater to?
Well, we touch about 32,000 over the course of our entire season. And so now I'm including families with that, parents and grandparents as well, because they're bringing their kids to the theater or to those classes. But yeah, that's really our ballpark of how many lives we get to touch through our performances, through our classes, our camps. We do a lot of outreach programs where we go out into the schools. We have a touring program. We have sensory friendly shows where we get to bring differently abled audiences into our spaces.
Mhm.
Lots of different ways to engage to get that 32.
What is what's coming down the pike for you guys?
Well, we're about to do a new world premiere of a play called Space Monkeys: The Adventures of Baker and Abel, which is about the first two American monkeys to have a successful space mission. And one of them lived right here in Huntsville for 30 years after she went up into space. Her name was Miss Baker. So it's a really fun part of Alabama history and science. And it's a story that's kind of lost. So we are telling it, we're bringing it to the stage. And we're going back to 1959, talking about the space race and all of the engineers that helped create all of the shuttles to get to space and all of that. So it's really exciting to kind of tie in arts and engineering and science and history all together on our stage. It's pretty special.
Who wrote it?
I did.
You did. How exciting. Now, are you gonna film it and are you gonna put it on YouTube?
We probably will. Usually we can't film our shows because we don't own the rights, but this one we do because I own them. So
Oh,
I hope
that's
to get it online.
terrific. That's terrific. So do you write a lot of the plays you show?
I do. I kind of consider myself the resident playwright at the theater company. This is my third play that I have written for this for since I've been there, and I've only been here. I've been here for about 2 years.
Uh-huh.
This
Uh-huh.
will be our third of my originals that we've produced, and I'll be writing another one for the next season as well.
Do you have an idea of what that play will be about?
Yes, I do. So we're creating kind of a fairy, like a new fairy tale world that's all about our values. So the first show that we did was Snow White and the Seven Littles. This
Uh-huh.
is Rapunzel and the Beanstalk. And next year will be Sleeping Beauty and the Little Green Pea. So we'll be mixing some of those stories together, and so I haven't written it yet. Who knows? But I do have the title.
That's great. So you're gonna have a theme in the play about the princess and the pea, right?
Absolutely.
Wow, that is really nice.
Try to mix in the Princess of the Pea with Sleeping Beauty and maybe a little 12 Dancing Princesses. I don't know. They love princesses down here. They sell. We make a lot of money off of the princesses.
So how do you combine science and your plays and history in your plays? That's really interesting.
Sure. Well, I'd be glad to share with you a little bit. So Rapunzel, what we've done is we are playing with the idea of a keystone species, which in science, if there's a plant or a vegetable or something that grows in the dirt of an area, that makes everything grow richer, makes everything kind of bloom, and it really kind of harvests the dirt, right? The soil. It's called a keystone species. So what we've decided is the Rapunzel plant of Niceland is the keystone species. And because Rapunzel is stuck in the tower, and she can't touch the ground, Niceland can't have their keystone species. So all of the plants are brown and withered, and they're trying to figure out how can we get the plants to bloom. So we got to get Rapunzel out of that tower to get on the ground so the plants can bloom. But she accidentally eats magic beans while she's up in that tower. And so her hair that's usually hanging down the tower grows up into a beanstalk to
Oh, wow.
continue what will happen.
Right.
So it's gonna be
So
fun.
when the kids come to see a play and you watch their faces and you watch, how they're reacting to the play, and once they leave the play, um, that must really make you feel terrific.
It's the most incredible feeling. I was walking, I was in work last night. I was at work last night, and just walking through the halls of a rehearsal studio and just heard one of the actors just reciting a joke that I had wrote in one of the scenes. You know, it lived in my head 2 months ago, and now it's on stage being brought to life by these wonderful community actors. And then when you see a kid smiling or laughing, you know, at a story that we're telling. I've got two little nieces. I've got a 2-year-old niece and a 4-year-old niece. And that was a big part of the reason why I moved back to Alabama, so I could be a part of their life. So getting
Hmm.
to do this as my life's work, getting to see their faces light up, and their friends' faces light up. It's just, it's a really, really cool job. I consider it my ministry. I
That's terrific. Have you always been interested in theater and the arts?
have from a very young age. I collected puppets when I was a kid. I started writing scripts very young. My dad was an educator, so I always had to stay after school. After all the kids went home, I had to stay in the school building. So I'd gather up all the teachers' kids, and I'd say, "Here's your part. Here's your line. Here's your costume. Everybody get together. We're putting on a play." And
Right,
that's from a very, very young age. That's kind of what I was doing, and now I get to do it for a living. So I feel very grateful.
great. So your latest play is gonna um be performed when?
We will be opening on February the 22nd. Will be Rapunzel and the Beanstalk, and then Space Monkeys: The Adventures of Baker and Abel will be on May the 9th.
So out of all of the art forms, what interests you about children's theater?
That is the best question because I'm also a college professor, and this is my thing that I always tell my students. I love theater because it is the one art form, and especially children's theater. It's the one art form where everybody can play. Everybody, every single art form has a seat at the table in theater. Music, visual art, dance, the rehearsal process, even film to an extent. Everything can be brought into theater to tell a story in a live way to a live audience. And the more that theater evolves and develops, we see even new forms of media and ways of storytelling coming in to how we tell our story in our little proscenium box on the stage. It's really exciting, and so I love that theater's inclusive of everything, which makes me a richer theater artist because I get to play with everybody.
So when you do a play, do you direct also?
Sometimes I do like to give my plays to other people to direct just to make sure that it still kind of stands up on its own. Sometimes if you direct your own work, you can kind of get in your own head. So Rapunzel, I've passed off to someone else, but Space Monkeys, I will direct myself.
But when you have somebody else direct your work and you're watching it, you might not agree with how they're doing it, right? What do you do
Yeah, it's
then?
very challenging. It is very challenging. It is a lesson in me letting go. I'm trying to let go that I can't be in control of everything. But yeah, that is one of the it's so funny that you say that, Cynthia, because that has been one of the more difficult things of my job to just sit back and watch and say, that's not what I imagined, but that'll work.
Wow. Wow. So
My job is to make sure the story is told, not that it's perfect or my way or the highway. I want to make sure kids are having fun. I want to make sure that we're building a good, strong community where people are joyful and having a good time and they feel safe and they feel creative. So if they don't use my idea, I'll be okay with it as long as everybody's having a good time.
so when you see these kids, do watching the plays, do you see how it's sparking a creativity in them? Does that happen?
It happens all the time, and that's what's so wonderful about Fantasy Playhouse is we have all of these wonderful access points for children through adults at any level. So maybe a kid comes and sees a show and exactly what you're talking about. There's a spark. And they're like, I got to do this. Well, they could come and audition. or they could come register for one of our classes. They could start at a really like kind of low level class if they just want to put their toe in the water. But we've got advanced level, we've got musical theater showcases, and we've got just lots of, or they could maybe come and see another show and try, play number two. Any way that they want to do it, whether they want to be on stage or just engage in the arts or try it, if they want to build something, if they want to maybe try to help us make a puppet for our next show, all of these different access points, we have those ready and lined up. So it doesn't matter what you like, you know, how old you are, what your skill set is. We're ready to welcome you into the door wherever you are, and to help create this community.
So you like children's theater rather than a theater for adults?
Well, I think I have more impact here, honestly. I
Really?
worked for many years in New York, and I think I had impact on my college students. And we were writing shows up there, and I started my theater company there. But it's hard. It's really hard to get things done in New York because everybody's trying to get things done in New York. Everybody's trying to get the job. Everybody's trying to book the show. Everybody's trying to, make the hit, right? So, but in Alabama, and I didn't realize that until I got down here and I was given this wonderful opportunity. And it's like, in Alabama, I'm able to have so much more impact in this community through fantasy, through these classes, through these shows. There's no way I would be able to affect 32,000 people if I was pounding the pavement in New York, trying to make my work. But here, I feel like I make a big difference, and that makes it worth it.
So would you say that people or artists in communities outside New York City or maybe California can find their niche more easily than they would if they were in the bigger cities?
I think yes, but I think I had to go to the big city to figure that out. I had to run away. I had to go be the prodigal son. I had to go think that I knew everything and kind of get popped in the nose a little bit to realize, what matters in life, what's important. It's family, it's community, it's impact, and it's creative space, and I can do that best down here. So that feels right to me. So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about fantasy theater, how it started and how it's evolved through the years.
Okay, yeah. Well, we are pretty much a volunteer organization through and through. Just in the past decade or so, we started hiring full-time staff, which is how I got my position. But from 1961, when it began, it started with 20 families, 20 people that were just new in Huntsville. And they said, hey, we want to start some arts organizations. They started the symphony. They started this children's theater. I believe they started the community chorus as well. And we were just one of the first arts organizations, and it just kind of continued to build over the years. And for many years, it was just, a couple of children's theater productions a year, just, family friendly, family fun that people could come in. And then it really started picking up in like the 80s and 90s. They got their own space over in one of our public a public space that was shared space. Then we got our own building. When I was young, we got our own designated space with rehearsal studios. So that was a huge step up when that happened. And now we are working towards a capital campaign for what our next step will be, which we hope is going to be a 32,000 square foot arts facility right here in downtown Huntsville. We're currently raising money for that, but we're just busting at the seams. We're doing so many things. We need more space. So that's our next step.
So do you think if you had not gone to New York City that you would not have returned to Alabama and have the vision that you've got?
I think you're right. I think so. I think that I had to go and kind of see the world and gain a different perspective to really appreciate what this community has to offer. So I'm so glad that I went. I went up there and had a good time, and I got nothing to show for myself. It's expensive to live up there in New York.
Yeah.
I came back with $0. But I got a lot of life experience and thick skin. And I, I measure my success and like my value as a theater artist not by my victories, not by the roles that I've booked or the famous plays that I've written. Really it's like the when you get in when you're in the trenches, when you make the mistakes, when you fall on your face, when you have to get back up and go again, that is where I feel like those are the things that have made me who I am, not the successes. So to be able to run away and go to New York, like you said, and to do all of those things and come back, it really shaped me, made me who I am, kind of created this, gave me character, and I could bring all of those things back. And I would have never been this person had I not had those experiences.
Was there the fantasy theater before you came back, or did you create it yourself?
It was there before. It was there before.
Okay. Okay. So, for anybody that wants to learn more about fantasy theater, how can they do so?
You can check us out at fantasyplayhouse.org. We've got a fun website that says all of our shows for the season, all of our outreach programs, all of our Princess Pancake events, our sensory friendly shows, our wonderful academy, our summer camps. Just sky's the limit. We've got so much going on. So check us out, fantasyplayhouse.org, right here in Huntsville, Alabama. And tell them Steven Tyler Davis sent you, the
You
artist.
Great. You've been listening to Stephen Tyler Davis. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Local Everywhere. So if you like the show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please like this video and good luck. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you,
Have a
Cynthia.
wonderful day.
Hi, everybody.